Good morning. How are you, Sue?
Oh, just fantabulous. What did you think about last night's shot heard round the world?
Yeah, well, it really was, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that the American people are just continuing to speak very, very loudly and clearly about their opposition to the excesses of one-party rule when it's completely captivated by the left wing of that party. I mean, we saw it in Virginia in the gubernatorial election. We saw it in New Jersey in the gubernatorial election. We saw it when in Pennsylvania 6 out of 7 statewide judicial candidates were Republicans who were elected. And then last night to watch the seat formerly occupied by Ted Kennedy. Notice I didn't say it was Ted Kennedy's seat.
No, that's the people's seat.
Well, exactly right, and it is the people's seat. And there was, I think, a sense on the part of some of the Democrats in Massachusetts that they're entitled to this. After all, it was in the Kennedy family for 50 years, literally. So this is, I think, just an incredibly encouraging and healthy reaction that says, wait a minute, these guys are just trying to go too far, too fast, too far to the left. We don't need to have the government take over health care and spend over $1 trillion of money we don't have with all kinds of tax increases and all kinds of mandates and forcing people to do this and that. And that we don't need that. We need reforms, but not that. We don't need a $1.4 trillion deficit. Last year, another $1.4 trillion this year, and by the way, they want to launch new stimulus bills. We didn't need to be bailing out every failing company, and they're proposing more. So what I see happening across the country, and certainly very much yesterday, is it's the American people saying, "Oh, wait a minute, we voted for a change in 2008, but this is not what we had in mind. Let's focus on what really matters. Let's focus on growing our economy. Let's get the economy back on track. Let's make some sensible reforms that help make health care more affordable and more accessible, but we don't need to turn the whole system upside down." And I really think that's what I'm hearing across Pennsylvania. That's what I think the people were saying in Massachusetts yesterday.
Now, you're a small business guy, and you've been involved in the Club for Growth. I just had a lengthy conversation before you came on the air with a small business owner before this guy that you just heard, who said that when the Republicans were in charge, they didn't do squat for small business. Is that true?
Well, I don't think that's true, although I think there's a lot Republicans did wrong when they were in charge, and I was very critical. I thought all the spending was terribly excessive. The deficits were too high. Earmarks were a terrible abuse of the system, and I opposed those things when I was in the House, and I've opposed them on the campaign trail. So certainly there were things the Republicans did that I think was a big mistake. I think lowering taxes was very helpful for small business. Lowering marginal income taxes, most small businesses are organized as what we call Subchapter S, which means they don't pay corporate income taxes. Their tax burden flows directly to the owners. And so when you lower marginal income tax rates, you lower taxes on small businesses, and that makes it that makes it possible for people to expand their business, and it makes it more viable to take a risk with your savings and open up a new business or expand an existing one. So,
is that enough, though, Pat? Really, is that enough? What more could
No,
be done?
There's more. And your most recent caller, I caught a little bit of what he was talking about in terms of the escalating cost of health insurance, which is a huge problem for small business. But let me ask this question. Sue, why is it that a loaf of bread doesn't cost $10? Why is it that a gallon of gas doesn't cost $50? There's a simple reason. It's competition, right? If somebody tried to sell you a gallon of gas for $50, you'd never buy it because you can go next door and buy it for about $2.75, right? So it's competition that makes this whole economy work, and it gives us choices, and it gives us low prices and good quality services and products. We choose, by virtue of our laws, not to have competition in health insurance. This is crazy. We should take down those barriers and force these insurance companies to earn our business, to compete against each other. And there should be hundreds of choices for any small business owner in Pennsylvania, or any family in Pennsylvania, or any individual in Pennsylvania, hundreds of choices of firms competing for their business. And if we had that kind of competition, we would see lower costs, we'd see more flexibility in structuring the product, and we'd find insurance companies much more responsive. But we choose to have a law that doesn't, and the Democrats refuse to change that law. And my view is, You can buy car insurance from a little green lizard, but you can't buy health insurance from a guy from Ohio. And that just doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree with you on that one. I think competition would be healthy. I think in Pennsylvania, most of us have the choice between maybe two providers that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's pretty typical. Right.
So buying insurance across state lines, so to speak. We also talked to somebody up in Massachusetts today who said that the folks of Massachusetts did what they did on their own, and they're not interested in having a giant federal government solution. Is it possible that states can make their own calls on these situations?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, Massachusetts has its own universal health care plan. I happen to have real doubts about the Massachusetts plan, but I would certainly defend Massachusetts' right to establish it if that's what they choose to do within their state. But it's actually much healthier to have these kinds of reforms done at the state level where, this is one of the great strengths of America. We have the states are the great laboratories of democracy, right? You can try things, you find what works, and then other states catch on. I mean, a great case in point was the dramatic welfare reform of the 1990s. That began in Wisconsin. It was Tommy Thompson and one state government that decided, you know what, this idea of permanently being on welfare isn't good for the people on welfare. It's not good for the taxpayers. And let's fundamentally change the system and make it temporary and put in a work requirement and a lifetime limit, and let's change the nature of it. It took years before the rest of the country caught on, but it did largely because of this one enormously successful experiment in one state where they eventually took 90% of the people off welfare and got them to work. Now, I just cite that as an example of the power of the freedom of individual states. And this federal government, of course, is trying to do everything and trying to expand in all directions and diminish the freedom of states to find solutions that work within their own states. It's very unhealthy for the states. It's unhealthy for our country.
Pat Toomey is our guest this morning on WILK. He's running for United States Senate. This is Joe from Tunkhannock who wants to ask a question. Hi, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. Speak up.
How you doing, sir?
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Very good. Hey, I do wish you the best, and I will support you in your election. And I will not forgive Rick Santorum what he did to you when you ran the last time. Well, my question is this. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
My question is this, and this is the question I called Chris Carney's office and our two senators. What's the incentive to work anymore? And that's my question to you. I mean, I know you're running again. I know it's a rhetorical question, but no one has an answer for it. Because under this program and a lot of these programs that's being passed, if the government's going to take care of us from cradle to grave, what's the incentive for me to work and pretty much break my back for people who don't want to help themselves?
Well, what you're touching on is a very, very important idea that I think is lost on so many of these people in Washington, in part because, most of these guys in Canada, about most, certainly many of the members of Congress, and including in the leadership and the administration, they've never worked in the private sector for a day in their life. I mean, never mind not having run a business, they've never worked for a business. So They don't understand that incentives matter, and I think that's what Joe is referring to. If the government is going to put incredibly onerous rules and regulations on everything that we do and then charge enormously high taxes to pay for this huge welfare state, then, it's hard to justify taking entrepreneurial risk, working hard, trying to get ahead if the government is always holding you back. So it's a very important point. Incentives matter, and we ought to be looking for ways to relieve the burden that government imposes on people, not increase it.
Holy cow! You're the first person that answered that.
Well,
I'm impressed.
I'm a guy that came from the small business world, so I understand that.
There you go. Right. Thanks, Joe. Pat, do you have to run, or you want to hang out for a little bit more? It's up to you.
I got a couple more minutes. All
right. Pat Toomey with us, running for United States Senate. And now it looks like Pennsylvania is in play. I saw that last night on, of all places, MSNBC. 1023 at WILK. We are pleased to have Pat Toomey on our show today, running for United States Senate on the Republican side. I have some callers for you, Pat. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here's Bill from Exeter Township. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Sue. Good morning. How are you?
Good
morning, Pat.
Morning, Bill.
Met you a long time ago up in Mountaintop at a little coffee hatch up there.
Oh, okay.
I believe it was one of the first times. But one of my main questions to you, Pat, and Sue knows how I feel about it, is that we know your opponent this time, if he's successful getting through his primary, always was able to reach out to the grassroots people. And it seems like our GOP party, even though they have their headquarters and so on, there's still I'll call them the big money and the big dealers, and there's the grassroots people. Do you have any certain plan to reaching out to, and I'm saying us, meaning myself and all the groups that I'm involved with?
Well, we are reaching out very aggressively to grassroots organizations, as well as really, building our own network all across the Commonwealth. For instance, in every single county, we have a whole team that we're in the process of putting together. In most counties, we already have a county coordinator, somebody who will be overseeing our volunteer efforts, and then we'll have various people performing other functions for the campaign, everything from distributing petitions to distributing yard signs when the time comes, and making get out the vote phone calls. And then I go out and speak to groups all the time, groups from all different walks of life. The only challenge, of course, is it's such a big state, and with 67 counties.
Well, Pat,
it's tough to it's tough because you end up having to turn down quite a lot of invitations. But it's a very aggressive effort on our part to reach out and build a strong grassroots network.
Well, the groups that, as you said, there's already coordinators and people in the different areas. I'll be truthful with you, Pat. I haven't heard of one in Luzerne County yet, and I do, and I say successfully worked with candidates with both parties because I believe in having the right person in the right place. And I know that in some instances it hurts our party's choice, but if you're looking for the right candidate and you have support of the grassroots people, it makes the movement a heck of a lot easier. They proved that up in Massachusetts.
Hey, Pat, do you have anybody in Luzerne County?
Yeah, I don't have the list right here with me, but I'm sure we have people helping us on the ground in Luzerne County. And, Bill, if you would be kind enough to call my campaign office, we will put you in touch with the team that we have. Okay. And it's probably still in formation, and we'd love to have your help. All
right, this is Wayne from Berwick on WILK. Hi, Wayne.
Hi, how are y'all doing this morning?
Great.
Good. How are you, Wayne?
Not too bad. I had a quick question for you. I mean, a lot of the problems that we have today stem from government interference in our lives. What are you going to do to loosen those restricting hands of big government from around the people and our businesses so that we can try to have a better prosperity? I know I've heard your opponent, Peg Luksic, speak a couple times this year, and I like a lot what she has to say, but haven't been able to hear what you've had to say.
Well, my entire record in public life has been to defend the freedom of people that I represented and the people of our country. I think the federal government has grown too big. It's too intrusive. It's way too expensive. It's spending our money wildly and irresponsibly, and I have a long record in Congress. I fought against the Republicans when I thought they were spending too much money, which they did. In fact, I led a filibuster on the House floor, filibuster by amendment against an appropriation bills when I thought the Republican bills were just out of control with their spending. I've been a very vigorous opponent of all the bailouts. This is very bad policy. It's not fair to taxpayers. It's bad economics. It leads to strings being attached and further bailouts. And I was opposed to them from the very, very beginning. I continue to be. This stimulus bill, likewise, very, very badly conceived in the first place, badly designed, badly implemented. I mean, the idea that we can borrow and spend our way to prosperity is just ridiculous. I think I have a very solid grasp of where prosperity comes from, in part because of my work in the private sector, my being a small business entrepreneur, restaurant owner. Prosperity all comes from the private sector. It doesn't come from government.
Pat Toomey, thank you. We'll talk again.
Sue, thanks for having me.